In terms of the spiritual teachers, we also need to understand that spiritual teachers may be on very different levels of consciousness. And it doesn't, in terms of non-judgment, because this is a very clear tool. Levels of consciousness bring extreme clarity. But to understand fully the spiritual teachers, one need to understand what they teach, what they share, and what fruits they bring. The only real judgment as such could be the judgment of one's fruits. But that should be not even a judgment. That is understanding. That, for example, there might be a spiritual teacher at the level of 700, the first enlightenment, but he might be so matured and so truly settled in it, and the fruits might be very bountiful comparing to another teacher at 800s or 900s who just sat their feet and perhaps just started to teach, or they're not even bothered to bring it forward. So therefore one cannot judge a teacher by the level of consciousness alone. One should take time to research that spiritual teacher, to become familiar with their teachings, to understand how the depth of their teachings, and most importantly the fruits of their teachings. How many other people have they helped to awaken? That is a good measure of fruits. How quickly are people awakening in their community? That is another good measure of fruits. Sometimes it happens that there is a very large community but nobody is really awakening. You know, it's just a community. Sometimes there is a small community but everybody is awakening. Or sometimes there is a balance in the middle, or there and there. So one needs to truly see and understand what they bring forward. Some spiritual teachers are more humanitarian. So yes, they do have a realization. For example, Amma. Yes, she's a very beautiful divine woman. So in her way, so now we can go into a few examples step by step. So Amma, oh yes, one moment. Yes, she's at 780, which is the first enlightenment, the first step of enlightenment, 780. So she is realized, yes. It is called enlightenment, yes. It is a realization of awareness, of the light of awareness. However, her focus is humanitarian. So in her spiritual teachings are quite simple. They're focused on love, inclusion, and service. So her primary focus is humanitarian, is to create community, is to be of service to the community. And she has a beautiful way of giving hugs. When there is a community, there is a certain energy building up, but one would rarely become enlightened by hugs or just by being in a community as such. However, awakenings are possible because the community energy creates a higher level of energy. So people do experience many beautiful experiences. So we should understand that she has a particular focus which is of love and service. And this is her contribution. This is what she's bringing forward. For example, another teacher, Eckhart Tolle, he is at 740 as well in realization of awareness, but his complete focus is on presence. He spent many years after his awakening just sitting in the parks and just immersed into that beingness. You know, how do you understand the beingness? And then when he started approaching other communities and other groups, he started getting some references. So only after some good years, he truly gained that deep seeing of presence. And this is his full focus, is to teach about presence. Here and there, he would mention awareness, consciousness as such, but his full focus is presence. And he has a great success with the media, with Oprah Winfrey, who brought him to the whole network of television. So his great success opened through that. And you know, it's truly a big gift to humanity to shift from a common spirituality into presence consciousness. Because from oneness unity consciousness, the next step is presence. So he's helping, assisting to awaken into a deeper level of consciousness a vast majority of spiritual seekers, spiritual people. Now let's look at some historical people. For example, Mahatma Gandhi. So before telling his level of consciousness, let's examine what he brought. He reunited India, and his focus was non-violence through unity to bring India into the freedom from British colonization. His message was of unity, of love, non-violence. So unity and love, at which level of consciousness that would resonate? That is 560. So Mahatma Gandhi is, we could say, the biggest example in the human history of the unity consciousness. Nobody could judge him. He was not fully realized or such and that. That was not his purpose. His purpose was to unite with love and non-violence and to bring freedom to India from British colonization. So we're getting to understand more and more that the spiritual teachers have a particular purpose, a particular message, and they deliver particular fruits. Another teacher, for example, Mother Teresa. She was focused on service of the sick and poor. She was focused on love, on unconditional love. She was a true example of unconditional love. Although there were a lot of political stuff happening around her, and the church, of course, it was very political as well. So there were things happening around, but regardless, you know, because she was living in terms of Christianity, in terms of the church, so there are many undercurrents in beneath which were influencing her, or simply trying to, you know, to negatively influence her as well. But she stand still as example of unconditional love. So she is the greatest example of that unconditional love and service to others, which correlates. She has a beautiful number we could say 555. 555. That is the number of unconditional love. And we know how much she served, the poor and the sick. And that takes a lot of love. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a very big heart to be able to do that. There is another very famous yogi, Parahamsa Yogananda, who brought Kriya Yoga to the West. So Parahamsa Yogananda follows the lineage of Mahavatar Babaji, then to Lahiri Mahasaya, who was also an avataric yogi, and then follows into Yukteswar, Shri Yukteswar. And Yukteswar was the teacher of Parahamsa Yogananda, and he told him to go to the West. So Parahamsa Yogananda, first let's examine the fruits. So anytime you look at spiritual teachers, first examine what they teach and the fruits that they produce. And only then think of the level of consciousness, not way round. Because way round is a very quick judgment without knowing what is really happening. So Parahamsa Yogananda brought Kriya Yoga to the West. His language was adjusted to the Westerners. That through Kriya Yoga you will find God. That you will realize God. That Kriya Yoga is the way to purify, to increase the life force energy, to unblock your energy channels, and to gain a deeper realization. In his writings you will find that he always addressed God as a father. He always addressed God as him, or without any attribute he or she, just as a being above him. So that already says that he was a son of God, we may say. That he had a direct relationship with consciousness, God, but there was a little bit of separation there in between. And his realization was at 740, which is also realization of awareness, realization of divine, of consciousness of God, but there was a little bit of gap, a little bit of separation of himself, which we may say he was a son of God, or in a direct communion with consciousness God. So that little gap was right in the middle. But yet again, his fruits are bountiful. He brought Kriya Yoga to the West, which is one of the most advanced yoga that there is on this earth. His book about what is the name of his autobiography of a yogi is a very renowned book which even Steve Jobs has admired. And at his death, he gave this book to all his dearest friends and employees. This is the gift that Steve Jobs gave at his death. That book to his best friends and employees. To the ones as a final gift, to understand that there's a much deeper meaning behind even his actions that he was doing. Krishnamurti, J.J. Krishnamurti, very well-known spiritual teacher. Now there was a very big influence of Theosophical Society because they were in search for a world teacher. And they found this boy in India with a very bright aura, who was J.J. Krishnamurti. He is a realized being. His realization is in terms of awareness at 740. But I would say that the Theosophical Society has really negatively influenced him, because he could have achieved more in a way, but the way he was treated, the way he was separated, the way he was forced into the position of the world teacher, he was never really comfortable with that. And you could see in his face, in his expression, in his videos, there was a very big lack of happiness. There was a deep intelligence, but a very big lack of happiness. So this is just another example that certain things can also be forced, and they're not fully, truly true. And even a spiritual teacher at that level may be quite unhappy. Even his love life was quite unhappy. Although he did have a very big intelligence, a very broad view of reality and society, so he did bring a lot of good insights about the human civilization, society, where it was and where it was going. Alan Watts, a very well-known British spiritual teacher focused on Zen. He has a lot of lovely books, a lot of lovely videos, a very masculine way of expressing the truth, a very Zen way also of expressing the truth. However, his realization was limited. His own realization was limited. His own realization was at 570, which we could say is the borderline of the seeking, the very borderline of the seeking, and he found comfort in that through this Zen attitude, through the Zen attitude. So he always would refer to examples. It was not his own deep realization that he would speak of, but he would always refer to examples, to Zen tradition, and his way is very humorous way as well. So he did contribute a lot of beautiful books, a lot of beautiful insights, and a lot of beautiful examples in his teachings. So yet again, there is no judgment, but there is a seeing of his teaching. It was always a reference. It was always reference to examples, to the Zen tradition. Another spiritual teacher that we really need to mention is Dalai Lama. Now first, let's examine again the fruits. He has a position. His position is a leader of Tibetan Buddhism. That already carries some heaviness with it. And that already carries a lot of karmic ties with Chinese. His whole life is about true non-violence, to escape from Chinese influence and to show them the way of non-violence, and to firmly affirm the Tibetan Buddhism tradition. His biggest contribution, I would see, is not with Chinese. His biggest contribution is preserving Tibetan Buddhism and spreading it into the West. And this is what he did very brilliantly, very great, and it really did spread out to the West very beautifully. Dalai Lama has a beautiful presence, a beautiful, really beautiful presence. Of course, since birth, he has been taught in the tradition. His whole life from birth was dedicated to Tibetan Buddhism. So he's extremely highly polished in that tradition, in Buddhism. And his presence has flowered in that Tibetan tradition. Yet again, there are some undercurrents. If one is aware, they could see that there are undercurrents, influences of Chinese, some hardships as well. He would always also refer to emptiness, but Dalai Lama would never really speak of awareness as such or consciousness as such. His own realization is at the level of 640, which is presence. And he is a really beautiful example of flowering of that presence in a Buddhist tradition. He does lack the sharpness of awareness consciousness, although he has developed a good sharpness of his tongue. I know he has a good sharpness of his tongue, but not necessarily realization of the real nature of reality as awareness, consciousness. Now there I feel some Buddhist people might start picking on my words, because in Buddhism there is a teaching of emptiness as reality, which is from where Buddha was spoken, it was correct. From where many books are written, that is not correct, not fully correct. So for those who will listen to this video in Buddhist tradition, emptiness is not where Buddha was spoken of emptiness is not the same as space, and it's not a being, and it's not a presence. From where Buddha spoke of emptiness was consciousness itself. It was a clear perception of consciousness itself. And he simply referred to the word as emptiness, as empty of any perceptions, of any distortions. Now, through thousands of years, many books were written, many traditions even developed of emptiness, as space, and that actually correlates to the level of 600s. And that's where many Buddhist monks are stuck. And they cannot get past it because emptiness is emptiness. Yes, it's empty, there's nothing in it. But consciousness is much deeper than space, or even non-dual emptiness. So I do need to tell this. Yes.
For some reason, my background in Buddhism, my understanding of how emptiness was taught to me is that it's beyond space, it's beyond everything.
Yes, that would be a more correct way, yes.
Because space is ether, still an element.
Yes.
And emptiness is clearly beyond all forms and all manifestations.
Yes. And
that's how the Heart Sutra
yes. Yeah, the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, for those who would really dig deep into Buddhism, into the very core of Buddhism, they would realize that where Buddha was speaking was beyond non-existence, beyond the great void. He was referring to consciousness itself. He was consciousness itself. He was that. He was a great avatar Buddha. But that is not to be confused with space and space emptiness as such. Because many Buddhist practitioners, and there are millions of people, they would start getting confused with that. And I know this. I've met so many Buddhist people. Okay. Any questions from your side, for example, of spiritual teachers? Yes?
Can a teacher make one of his students go to a higher level of consciousness as himself?
A teacher would assist the student to get to his level of consciousness, but there are, of course, many examples that the students would surpass the teacher. So a teacher would help to bring them to their level of realization, but because of the student's previous merits and their soul and their own previous awakenings and previous lifetimes, they, of course, it's totally possible. There are many examples of that. Okay, any more questions?
I like the Greek philosophers. Is there like a general amount where they were like around?
Yes, yes, yes. Some of the, I will not mention names because I would need to be more specific, but I know some of them. And I know some of their levels of realization. There were a few philosophers at 1000. Yes. There were others in 700s. And there were others in lower levels of consciousness. I will tell you one thing about some of the greatest Greek philosophers. Some of them were previous yogis in India, in their previous lifetimes. They're the same souls who were traveling throughout this planet. You know, the soul reincarnates into different places at different times to bring the teachings to different people in different language so that they could understand. So yes, in the Egyptian tradition, in the Greek tradition, in South American tradition, African or Indian or Asian tradition, many times it would be the same souls traveling throughout lifetimes, bringing the message in different form of the same one consciousness, to bring the teachings forward to different civilizations throughout the history.
Just present people right now, Muji or Nakam, do you have a feeling?
Yes, yes, yes. Gangaji, Muji, they realized at 1000. Muji is extremely social in his expression. Gangaji is extremely intimate. And she's also extremely well polished energetically. She's a woman that I truly admire, of her depth of realization and energetic advancement. Muji brought it in a very social way and a very, we may say, available way for a common person. So he would refer, and his satsangs are in that way. Matt Kahn is the last time I checked was last year. So by that I mean that now he could be higher. But last time I checked last year, he was in 800s. Yes, and he's also very much love focused, so he could be in the higher 800s. Last time I checked, which was last year. Now it could be already, he could be more realized. Of course, we know Sai Baba, Satya Sai Baba, he was avataric at 1000. I will just mention a few names: Anandamayi Ma, Ramana Maharashi, Neem Karoli Baba, all are 1000s, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Papaji of course, Lahiri Mahasaya, he is a avataric yogi, a very, very advanced realization, energetic evolution as well. Ananda Murti of Ananda Marga at 1000. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi of Transcendental Meditation at 1000. Adida, who is a Western, fully realized being, avataric being. Nityananda in India, very expressive, very extravagant teacher. He is also avataric teacher. There is Francis Lucille, Rupert Spira in France and England, John de Ruyter, Ramaji, Ravi Shankar is another example of humanitarian. He actually is at 890 of Art of Living. And Sadhguru also is very similar at 880. Very big humanitarians. Very, very big humanitarians. Global humanitarians. Mother Mira in Germany. She's a Avataric woman at 1000. Yes, these would be the examples, yes. And of course, the historical teachers like Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Mahavatar Babaji, they're all 1000s.
Can every soul, in theory, reach 1000?
Every soul, in theory, is already 1000, and in reality, however, in this human incarnation, it is one's realization of the soul and consciousness itself, which is measured by these numbers of levels of consciousness.
Your inner law is, do I have to fully be in inner love before I can truly, on a long term, fall in love with someone else?
Oh no, no. Love happens all the time.
Without women.
Inner love means love from inside you, and you no longer necessarily need a partner to feel love inside you. Because you realize and you open that love inside you. You also realize that in your past relationships, it was the same love, but the partner would assist you to open that love inside you. Inner love is a certain maturity that you realize that it has always been inside you. And you experience love from your very childhood, from your mother, then from your very first love, from the teenage love, from early adulthood love. It grows and evolves. This love, experienced, grows and evolves.
Could there be another map for 1000 and above? And
For what?
To see where teachers are in the 1000 and above bracket.
That's where we are speaking of integration. Integration, realization of 1000 is realization itself, of consciousness itself. And then the next step, post-realization, is integration. And the third step is teaching, and then it's the fruits being delivered out of the teaching. So yet again, not everybody at 1000 is equal in how much they are integrated, in how much and what way they're teaching it others, in what way they're helping to others awaken and realize that, and bringing the fruits out.
So there's no requirement to live in a cave, you have to teach.
You don't have to teach. A cave is a very usual example of 900s, or a time of integration. Many masters would spend time to integrate, or to further deepen into realization. But usually they would come out of the cave and start to meet in one way or another people, or people would come to them.
Are dimensions anywhere to be seen in consciousness?
Yes, that's the level of consciousness, the map of spirituality, and there you can see all dimensions related to those levels of consciousness. So There is also a difference between spiritual teacher and spiritual master. Okay, there are many spiritual healers who are doing healing work. They're called spiritual healers. There are many light workers who are doing a lot of light work. Yoga meditation teachers can begin anywhere from 400s, going all the way up. So a spiritual healer usually would be in 500s, and that would be either individual healing or planetary healing. A spiritual teacher would be the one who would have at least a realization of presence, at least, to be called a spiritual teacher. A spiritual master is the one who helps others to awaken into at least more advanced states of consciousness. So one could call or could be referred to as a master who have helped at least one person or two people to awaken into higher levels of consciousness. That is a definition of a master, meaning being able to replicate that awakening and give it to others so that others can awaken as well. So the spiritual masters are not so easy to be found. There are many spiritual teachers and very big spiritual teachers, but they might be very humanitarian spiritual teachers or very, very community-focused spiritual teachers. However, in their community, if you would go deeper to inquire, you would find that maybe there is one or two who have reached presence after 10, 20 years. You know, to have somebody awoken into a higher level of consciousness, even of a spiritual teachers and even of big communities, is very rare if we would really examine. You know, there have been so many people coming to me and asking, where is this teacher? And then we, let's say, gently investigate how many others are awoken in their community. And we would see that they have a lot of practices, a lot of rituals, a lot of evenings and meditations and bhajans and so forth, but there's nobody really progressing anywhere very, very high, you know, so that's another thing. So a master would give and would enable others to realize into more advanced states of consciousness, into enlightened states of consciousness. And there's a next step of avataric masters who have a global mission or a planetary mission. So in one way, seen or unseen, they would immensely contribute to this whole human civilization, to the whole human collective consciousness, and to the whole planet Earth as a whole planet. So these would be the avataric spiritual masters. Not only they would enable others to awaken into enlightenment, but their mission would be seen or unseen on a much larger scale. So this is yet another, we may say this is the final frontier. And then we may say there are one of the greatest known master is Mahavatar Babaji. There are also what are called lords, you know, Lord Buddha, Lord Jesus, or the Christ, Lord Krishna, and so forth. These are, we could say, the even further advanced avataric beings. Their mission is of a whole humanity, their mission is of the whole earth, and throughout millions and millions of years, you know, they're eternal beings. They're advanced in terms of millions or even billions of years. That's how advanced they are. So the name Lord is applicable to even further advanced avatar who has a history of millions or even billions of years. And there is another yet level which is called Mahavatar, which is the greatest avatar. So one being that we know of on this earth is Mahavatar Babaji. Mahavatar Babaji is the avatar of avatars. We may say the father of avatars. So we know also that there are three key gods known as Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. And from them, there are avatars coming forward into this universe, performing certain functions. And that's where we reach the level of divinity, of avatars, mahavatars, gods and goddesses, at the level of divine. These are all manifestations of divine, of the same consciousness. They're all completely, fully, totally realized. They're all simply expressions of divine consciousness itself. It is only that their advancement, their mission, their energy, and what they bring is at a global level or at a collective humanity level.
Question about integration. I've seen in my inquiry that being with you and Leon, that I have an inquiry around where's Idel. I hear a lot of Mindo in me, and I hear a lot of Leon's words, and I'm like, okay, am I? What's going on? Is it part of the integration?
Yes,
I feel
yes.
like, obviously some...
Firstly, you're...
I don't want to surrender...
Yes.
I don't know what the word is...
Firstly, you're supported.
Like, everything, whatever Amma says. I said, I'm saying that about you. I said, look,
yes.
Let's ask Mindo. Why can't I just ask myself?
Yes, of course you can, yes.
I'm marinating in that.
Yes.
But I still go... But
first you're basking in the teacher's light, in the teacher's consciousness. The teacher is fully supporting you at all levels of existence, from the very physical body all the way to your soul and consciousness. The support of the teacher is everywhere, at all levels of your being, in all dimensions. So the teacher fully takes care of you. A true teacher fully takes care of you at all dimensions, all levels of consciousness. And first you bask in that light of consciousness. You drink from that cup of light. Your own energy starts to develop, align and open into your highest qualities, into your highest virtues. If there is something wrong, the teacher will immediately tell you. And then a teacher would also guide you towards your higher qualities, your higher realization. So now, of course, you're fully supported. And yes, you feel the connectedness. And yes, sometimes you may speak as we speak. To use our words, it's totally fine. You may think as we think as well. And during the integration, you will come more and more to settle within your own self. Yes. To settle within your own self. And once you grow up and mature to a certain state, the spiritual teacher says, now you're ready. Now you're ready. And this is where then I advise one, or I start preparing one to become either a teacher or to start bringing the fruits, help others in one way or another. So yes, we do have our students around whom I'm already guiding to become teachers. Some of them are already teaching. You know, Leon, she's already a beautiful teacher. She's also advancing in integration. You know, that takes time, but she's already bringing forward very beautiful teachings. And there are others also stepping forward, beginning to teach. It takes time to integrate and then to be ready to teach.
When I met her in Rishikesh, all I could find was love. And she shared, she just the absolute realization, and I'm like, I couldn't find any stickiness. There wasn't much, but there was still that kind of, it's just, all I can find is love. I kept saying that in Rishikesh. I can't find anything else.
Yes, it was a beautiful time. It was. Every teacher also, we may say, effortlessly finds a better way to deliver the message, a better way to help others. It's a continuous play of life. It never stops. In my own life, I experienced there are steps. There are certain... Now this is where I will not bring it forward yet, and I will not tell you yet who am I truly, fully, but certain steps are already completed of my mission. One mission was completed in terms of helping to fully activate the global grid, the crystalline grid of Earth. And the milestone of that step was activation of all Greece, of all the temples of Greece, which connect to the ley lines underneath. And we jump-started the ley lines of Greece, of the whole country. We jump-started the ley lines beneath the temples. The temples awoke in their energy fields. And then it reconnected with the grid of the European energetic grid and then the global grid. So that was one of the key missions, which was completed in 2016. And that was extremely vital for the planetary ascension process, for someone to physically be there and to jumpstart it in order to complete the whole grid. There are many mountains which I have awoken, many vortexes in different parts of the world, even countries that I have cleansed, like Malta is being taken care of, and yes, and many other places are being taken care of on a much higher level than any other light worker could do. So in 2016 there was this planetary mission which I was playing a key role. And I know this because even my surname is Greek. It means, Damalis means sun, a radiant sun, and gentleness. I can recall my past lives in Greece. I was one of the philosophers, a very well-known philosopher. I will not tell you now. It's not the time yet. But I was one of the very well-known philosophers, a father of, if I say one more word, you will know it, so I will not say it. And when we were walking in Athens, in the spiritual realm, everybody was treating us like father, like we were there before. I could recall the places I was walking before. I went into the school which was established by my previous self. when I read the books, I was giggling of what I was writing in my past life. A lot of beautiful insights. The second key mission that was completed was August 2018 and January 2019, which were the global planetary meditations. To assist in August 2018, the planet Earth has tipped the light over the dark. The global humanities consciousness has tipped the light over the dark. And now in January 2019, we have advanced into at the level of 440 as the mass humanity consciousness. And we have shifted into the new octave of planet vibration, which is now aligning from carbon into plasma crystalline octave of energy. So these two dates were the second key points of my mission. And we may call the third mission, which is already happening, is to awaken others into enlightenment realization, of which there are quite already a few people in our community and becoming teachers. And now we're slowly settling, preparing for the next mission, which is a global foundation, which is being established this year. So I'm still young, there are still many things to come, and we will see as it progresses forward. So this year is a very big year as well. And things are advancing very forward in a very, very beautiful way. Any more questions?
Kind of maybe mindy questions, but all these teachers we mentioned, I mean, where's the teacher from Africa or China or South America? Is it because we're
in Africa, unfortunately, unfortunately, I'm not aware of spiritual masters in Africa. I know shamanic, people, shamanic medicine people, but I'm not aware of any African.
Coming up to our European awareness, is it, or?
Well, they might be living in the West, from being native African. In the Asia, yes, there are, yes. Well, Lao Tzu is a great example of what he brought forward.
What about a boy in Rwanda who spontaneously just started seeing Jesus and communicating words that he never spoke before? I'm just saying.
I don't know. I don't know about him, yes. Even in Asia, such being native Asian, does anybody know a realized teacher? A native, of course there are some monks, there are monks. Shaolin, I wouldn't say, they're more focused on the physical aspect. But in Tibetan monks, they would be in Himalayas a lot and maybe in some monasteries. So there are. They might not be very well known in the West, though.
Yeah, many of them, many Asian teachers in China and in Thailand and Japan are not that well known.
Yeah, they might be not very well known in the West.
So it's just not in our
Thich Nhat Hanh, he's a Zen teacher, but he's living in France. He's a Vietnamese teacher living in France.
Is it possible to assess philosophy per se rather than a particular?
Yes, of course. Any book can be assessed according to the level of consciousness. Every philosophy can be assessed at which level of consciousness it resonates. Any teaching.
Shamanism, for example?
Yes, it can be, yes.
Would we know?
Well, shamanism is a very big word.
Yes.
to be more precise, you should assess the specific shaman.
And how many people with this are on 1,000 in Spanish at this time?
Currently, there is about... Okay, we can finalize with this note, today's topic. Currently, there is 308 million people at the level of 400 in terms of intellect and reason. There is 15 million people at the level of 400 in terms of spiritual consciousness awakening. There is 2.2 million people at the level of inner love awakening. There is about 450,000 at the level of oneness, unity consciousness. There is about 4,300 plus at the level of real presence, being, 600s. There is over 400 people at the level of non-duality, 670. There is over 300 people at the level of 700s. And now I believe there is about, I would need to recall again, there is about 80 people or so in 800s. It might be about 30, 40 people in 900s. And there is about 60 people at 1,000 who are settled and more integrated. There are some who have just awoken yet as well, but they need time. In terms of known spiritual teachers at 1,000, there is about 40 who are known teachers. They might also be not known, but they are teachers. They might be in Asia, in China and so forth. There's about 40 of those people currently living who are teachers at 1,000. There are a few more who are also awakened, but they are integrating right now. And avataric beings currently, there is about 6, maximum 8 right now. Which is also very big.
Are they known as well? Are they hidden or are they known as well?
Hidden and known, yes.
Is China very, is with the feeling that in China things are suppressed and there isn't much?
No. In China they have a whole tradition of Taoism, of Qi, energy work with Qi, and Chinese. China is very big. It's very big. But generally speaking, there aren't many Chinese masters, we may say, or spiritual teachers. Not that many. Chinese, I don't know. I'm not aware of even a single one in terms of a name that I would have a reading or a book or video to read.
Yeah, the interesting thing is China is the most populated country in the world, but myself, I don't know of any Chinese masters. And there's a lot of Buddhism and a lot of Taoism in China, but I don't know of any personally.
I'm not aware of anyone either in China.
I'm curious about the levels of Osho and of Srila Prabhupada.
The second name, I don't know him. Osho, yes.
He was the Krishna consciousness.
Krishna consciousness movement.
In America.
Who?
He's the guru that established Krishna consciousness in the West.
What's the name?
Srila Prabhupada. And went
Okay.
to the West, many communities.
Okay. It would be good if you would write it down and I can become more familiar.
Book I sent you.
Just if you send me a message, yes.
Okay.
Osho, he had extremely beautiful tongue. The way he, his intelligence, his expression is very, very beautiful. There is a lot of love there. There is a lot of deep insight in his writings and his teachings. A very beautiful presence, a very matured being, a very mystical teacher as well, which is a mystical intelligence. Of course, we know of his books and his videos and his teachings. His realization is at 840, at the very top of this mystical void, touching love, divine love. Touching divine love, this deep mystical intelligence, and very, very matured. So, a very beautiful being. Very beautiful being he was. He is. Also, you can see in his teachings a very controversial. He was quite focused on sacred sexuality. What his students did is another thing. A very mystically, intelligently confusing to shake up people in many ways. These are the signs of extreme maturity at the very top of mysticism. Of the level of 840, I would say he's the most beautiful example as a teacher, as a master at the level of 840. One of the most beautiful examples of that.
Can anyone go down, like it started very high and then went the other way in the matter of consciousness?
Consciousness can only go down with traumatic experiences, with abuse and traumatic experiences. Very rare in general. Okay, very well, very well.
So it's at death. So is that when Osho leaves his body? Like my parents, if I was to measure them, it's at their death. Is it? When I feel a number in the kinesiology.
No. It's his being at the time when he was teaching.
Okay.
Yes.
So after death, after the body.
Some beings are eternal beings. Their presence remains here fully. Every being is eternal being, but not everybody's presence remains here fully on this earth.
So if I was to try and do numbers for my parents who passed, left the body,
most likely your parents would be already in another realm, in another body. They might have been reincarnated already, generally speaking. So if you would measure them, it would be particularly in that point of time, when they were alive, yes.
I wanted more awareness about dimensions. We are in 3D and 5D. But what about all the other?
We're 3D and 4D now. 5D consciousness is being activated. 4D is time and space. Etheric, astral, plasmic energies.
And how do we integrate more of the higher dimensions?
Through realization. Once you go in deeper into realization, higher vibrational energies, dimensions open up.
And are they like an activation, or are they through grace? These dimensions.
Consciousness is the primary focus that directly opens all the doors. For those who are energy sensitive and third eye sensitive, these other activations will happen through grace, some of them through your own merit. So this is where the universe is so large. There are many dimensions, there are many sub-dimensions. There are many different frequencies. Because even here we're sitting physically, but time and space is also here, and plasmic, etheric, astral energy, fifth dimensional consciousness being activated on this earth. So this earth is in a very big transition right now. I would say that all other dimensions are also here, but they're not perceptible or activated or connected to this planet Earth or humanity as a whole yet. They're all here. I can perceive all of them. Many people can perceive all of them, but they're simply not connected to this Earth system yet. And people are not aware of those deeper dimensions yet. They're all here anyways. One more beautiful example is Rumi. I cannot feel him individually, but what he was bringing, you know, the poems that he was bringing was during the swirling time. So he was channeling. He was channeling. So he was swirling and channeling. His poems is the absolute love. The way they are completed, the way they're brought forward and completed is the absolute love. Where it came was from absolute love. They are absolute love. I don't know if he was realized himself or he simply swirled and channeled it. But one way or another, the poems that he brought forward are absolute love.
Does it require absolute surrender and kind of loss of self to channel?
Channeling is very technical in nature. Yes. There is a very big difference between channeling and being. Channeling is bringing a message from somewhere else, from somebody else. Being is a very different case. Being that who speaks is a different case, rather than bringing a message from someone else or some other place.
How can you tell if someone is channeling? For example, if you say,
Well, everybody knows, you know, there's another teacher, very popular as well, called Bashar. He's alive right now. He himself, his name is Daryl Anka, but he's channeling Bashar, who, it's very interesting the way it happens there. He's channeling himself from the future self, who is fully realized, who is at 1000, but he himself in this body is awakened, but he is not fully realized, he himself yet. So the body-mind mechanism is simply attuned to his future self channeling. And what he brings is a lot about, other civilizations, a lot about energy, vibration, frequency. What he channels, what he brings is at the level of 1000 in a very energetic, vibrational way. He is a very different kind of, the message is a very different kind of message. A very future galactic based message. But, so he simply goes into a trance and he channels those messages. So yet again, there is a difference between channeling and being in a conscious state. Okay. You will find also many new teachers coming forward. On YouTube, you can already see there's like 10, 20 new teachers teaching non-duality and presence. They have these conferences, science and non-duality. There are many things beginning to happen. You will start finding many people stepping forward, many people awakening. It is the time of awakening. It is the time of awakening. Yes, you will see 10 more next year, and 20 more a year after, and 50 more a year after that. You will see the diversity and variety of how the teachings will be brought. Some of them will be very little matured. Some of them will be more matured. The things that they will teach will be on all kinds of levels of consciousness. The diversity that is coming forward with this new awakening is going to really explode in the spiritual way. The spiritual teachings will explode in a spiritual way. The conferences that they will bring, all the meetings and, everything is going to be just geared towards spiritual realization. Consciousness realizations. The scientists are awakening into deeper realization of consciousness, quantum physics. Our whole human civilization is now at the brink of awakening into the new light of consciousness. Currently, as a whole humanity, it's in a pre-spiritual awakening in terms of consciously awakening. In terms of energy, it is already awakened at the level of 440 right now as a mass consciousness. However, individual awakening is now at the brink of awakening, which may happen in the next 1 or 2 years, 5 years maximum. So we will see a very, very huge awakening happening very soon. Millions and millions will awaken to higher consciousness, spirituality, and there will be tens and hundreds of new teachers starting to teach, coming forward. Generally, they would start with presence, non-duality. To find a deeper teacher is more difficult.
How would a new financial system work within the 45
Quantum financial system, which is already activated, not yet known in public. It is quantum based. Nobody can hack it, nobody can abuse it. All these financial instruments, whatnot, they're just house of cards, which are already collapsing. And the quantum financial system is already activated. It is gold asset backed already in China, US, Russia, Zimbabwe, and some other countries. We are at the brink of awakening into the golden age. There are many things happening right now underneath. The first step was energetic activation of planet Earth, which was completed in 2016. It was crucial for the whole planet and humanity. The second step was as above, so below. First things happen above in 5D, 4D, then they go below into 3D. So now we are starting to manifest 3D systems which are being put in place for integration with 4D, 5D energies that are to be yet fully activated very, very, very soon. We're speaking of a year to maximum 5 years' time. The things that we've been preparing for, some of the things took hundreds of years, some of the things took decades, some of the things in physical were being done in the last few years. So nobody's seeing yet fully, but everybody's feeling that something major is about to happen. In the alternative media, it's already coming very brightly forward. So, as always, for something to manifest, there's a cycle of manifestation. From consciousness, there's a birth of energy idea. From the energy idea, then it goes downward into manifestation as energy idea. And then it comes into the conscious mind, and then it is felt, consciously understood, contemplated, reasoned, and then the solution is drafted on paper or in mind, and then actions are taken, and then things physically are manifested. And now, physically, we're going to enter a new golden age very, very, very soon. Because everything was already done and is being done right now. For many, many years, being already prepared for this beautiful, grand awakening.
Can it be seamless, or it has to be chaotic, like a tsunami?
This is why there are many postponing happening. Many dates are being postponed because of assurance of a seamless transitioning. There's a divine timeline. There's a divine intentional timeline, which is the most positive timeline. And then every moment in the quantum realm, the timelines are converging, shifting. The probabilities, the percentages of probabilities are shifting, depending on a real-time changes. So there is a divine timeline as a benchmark, as a goal. But then in the now, everything happens in the now, and the timelines are converging and shifting and merging. So in August 2018, we shifted onto a much more positive timeline. The light has tipped the dark. In January, we tipped yet another much quicker timeline towards the event, the golden age beginning. And every moment, every being of light, every person with inner light or higher consciousness is influencing every moment quantum field timelines. So we are co-creating now the speed of awakening and the speed of manifestation.
So is that correspondence also to Kali Yuga coming to an end to Sat Yuga?
Yes, it already has ended. Yes.
Already?
Yes. Officially, we may say, well, the collective mass consciousness in August 2018 has shifted into more light than darkness. So we may say the dark age has ended. And now we are in a period, right now, no longer resistance with the dark. Now we are overshining the dark. So now we're in a period of standing strong in the light. There are many beings listening right now as well. Even in 4D. We have an attendance of few thousand right now, if in 4D. So now the light has tipped the dark, and now we are no longer in resistance phase. We're standing in a holding the light and to overshine the dark. Now everything is more or less automatically kicking in, that the light is purging the dark. The military tribunals have already started in January 2nd. They're not yet known publicly, but they already started. There are thousands and thousands of criminals being arrested, human traffickers, slave traffickers. Countries are being purged. US, Vatican is being purged. Asia, Middle East, Europe, France, England, all the countries are being purged of very dark beings. First, the purging was happening in 4D, because that's where the major ones were. So the years of between 2000 and 2018 were a very big battle was going on. Literally Armageddon, but in 4D, not 3D, 4D. It was the battle of evil. And this battle was won last August. It was a time of very brave souls. The things that we were doing in 4D are unimaginable in 3D. So we are in the greatest historical times of this planet Earth, and a galactic battle of evil versus light. Historical times, even in galactic proportion.
I wanted to share a channeling that Joshua said recently with this guy called Jay was channeling, and he says it's now to look at the darkness not as something to avoid, but to give it light.
Exactly, yes.
To heal this duality.
Yes,
so
yes.
He said even if your childhood hated a certain pathway or religion, and it led you to spirit or consciousness, it's now to even to love those places that you hated at some point, to give that light, to give the healing of the whole duality.
It's now to hold the light, to heal the earth. Before we were in a battle. Right now the battle is over, more or less. There are still things happening in 4D and 3D, but the major dark beings are removed. So now it's a cleansing and healing process, we may say. Arresting tribunals. We are now cleaning the mess of the dark.
Is it a personal process, feeling into the heart, but it's still not healed, just letting it rest? Or is it not the human heart, is it the heart of consciousness?
I think you know the answers already. Follow your heart, be strong in light and love. And anything that you can do, you should do. But also have wisdom not to do what you don't need to do. Let's spend just a few moments in silence.